Welcome to ChronosX Secrets. On the morning of September 14, 1982, a black Rover car carrying Princess Grace of Monaco failed to take a bend on a narrow mountain road above the sea. It went through the barrier. It tumbled down the cliff. Her daughter, Stephanie, in the passenger seat, survived with injuries. Grace Kelly, Princess of Monaco, the woman who had once been the most desired actress in Hollywood, the woman who had given up everything to become a real-life fairy tale princess, died the following day. She was 52 years old. The official explanation was a minor stroke behind the wheel, but the questions never fully went away, and neither did the grief. Because Grace Kelly was not simply a celebrity, and she was not simply a princess. She was something rarer and stranger than either of those things. She was a woman who spent her entire life. This is her story. She was born Grace Patricia Kelly on November 12, 1929, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, into a family that was, by any external measure, a success story. Her father, John Brendan Kelly Sr., was a self-made millionaire, a bricklayer's son from Philadelphia who had built a construction empire with his own hands and had won 3 Olympic gold medals in rowing along the way. Jack Kelly, as everyone called him, was the kind of man who dominated rooms simply by entering them. He was competitive, physically imposing, and deeply convinced that achievement was the measure of a human life. Her mother, Margaret Major, was a former model and physical education instructor, the first woman to coach women's athletics at the University of Pennsylvania. She was beautiful, controlled, and exacting. Grace was the third of 4 children, and from the very beginning, she felt like the one who did not quite fit. Her brother Kel was the athlete, the one who would eventually follow their father to Olympic glory, the one who was considered, in the brutal shorthand of family judgment, the pretty one, but not the standout one. What nobody had noticed yet was what was burning underneath the quiet. She had been performing since she was small, playing dress-up, putting on shows for the family, retreating into her imagination with a completeness that made the people around her slightly uneasy. At 12 years old, she acted in a local theatrical production, and something changed in her face on that stage that the adults watching could not name but could feel. She wanted to act, she told her parents. Her father was not enthusiastic. The theater was not a serious profession. The theater was not the Olympics. The theater was not a brick laid straight and a wall built true. Grace listened, and then she left for New York. She was 18 years old when she enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in 1947, having convinced her reluctant father to allow it. She supported herself partly through modeling work, appearing in advertisements for cigarettes, toothpaste, and various products that her Philadelphia family would have found somewhat undignified. She was astonishingly beautiful. The photographs from this period make it clear. But there was something in her face beyond beauty, a stillness, a control, a sense that she was thinking something she had no intention of sharing with the camera. That quality would define her entire career. She began working in live television drama, which in the early 1950s was one of the most demanding environments a young actor could find. No retakes, no editing. You performed in real time before a live camera, and whatever happened was what went out across the airwaves to the audience. She was exceptional at it. She made her Broadway debut in 1949 at the age of 19 in a production of The Father by August Strindberg. The critics noticed her. The industry noticed her. Hollywood came calling. Her first significant film role was in High Noon in 1952 opposite Gary Cooper. She was 22 years old. She played Amy, the new Quaker bride of the town marshal, and she brought to the role a moral seriousness, and then she made the film that would define her relationship with the director who arguably understood her better than anyone else in the industry, Alfred Hitchcock. Hitchcock saw something in Grace Kelly that he had been looking for, something he would describe in interviews as an inner fire beneath an icy surface. He made 3 films with her in 2 years, Dial M for Murder in 1954, Rear Window in 1954, To Catch a Thief in 1955. In each of them, he placed her in situations that revealed that particular contradiction, the cool exterior and the passionate interior. And she delivered performances of such technical precision and emotional authenticity that the camera could not look away from her. In 1954, she was 24 years old, and she won the Academy Award for Best Actress, not for the Hitchcock films, for The Country Girl, in which she played the dowdy, exhausted wife of an alcoholic actor played by Bing Crosby. She had campaigned quietly but determinedly for the role. Over the objections, she was, by 1955, arguably the biggest female star in Hollywood. She was on the cover of every magazine. She was the image that the entire world associated with a particular idea of American elegance. And then she went to the Cannes Film Festival in May of 1955. And everything changed. She was photographed with Prince Rainier III of Monaco as part of a routine press engagement. Monaco was a tiny principality on the French Riviera, barely larger than a neighborhood, with a population of around 20,000 people. Rainier was 31 years old, charming, stocky, a ruler who needed something that Monaco's treasury could not provide. Monaco was in financial difficulty. Its glamour was fading. Its casino was losing its luster. What it needed, and what Rainier understood with a clarity that was both calculating and genuine, was a princess. Not just any princess. A princess who could bring the world's attention back to this small, rocky outcrop on the Mediterranean. They corresponded after Cannes. In December of 1955, Rainier came to Philadelphia and spent. The fairy tale had a price tag. The wedding took place in 2 ceremonies in Monaco in April of 1956. The civil ceremony on April 18th, the religious ceremony on April 19th. Over 30 million people watched on television around the world. 4,500 journalists were credentialed to cover it. She wore a gown by MGM costume designer Helen Rose, made from 25 yards of silk taffeta and 100 yards of silk net, decorated with rose point lace and seed pearls. She was 26 years old. She would never make another film. That last sentence bears repeating because it is perhaps the most remarkable fact in a story full of remarkable facts. Grace Kelly was at the absolute peak of her Hollywood career. Hitchcock was developing a new project specifically for her, a film called Marnie. MGM still had her under contract. She was the most bankable female star in the industry. She walked away from all of it. She walked away because Rainier had conditions. There would be no more films. A princess of Monaco could not continue working as an actress. That life was over. She agreed. Whether she agreed with her whole heart, whether in the quiet of her new palace on the rock she ever looked out over the Mediterranean and felt the particular grief of a woman who has silenced her own most authentic self, is something she spoke about very rarely and never completely. What we know is this: she threw herself into her new role, with the same disciplined intelligence she had brought to every other role in her life. She learned French. She mastered the protocols of European royalty. She bore 3 children: Caroline, born in 1957, Albert, born in 1958, and Stephanie, born in 1965. She founded the Princess Grace Foundation to support the arts. She sat on the board of 20th Century Fox. She organized the annual Red Cross Gala in Monte Carlo, which became one of the most prestigious charity events in Europe. She was, by every observable measure, an excellent princess. But there were cracks. Her marriage to Rainier was described by those close to them as a relationship that had genuine warmth and genuine friction in equal measure. He was a man of his era, autocratic in his household as in his principality. She was a woman who had been independent since she was 18, who had run her own life, her own career, her own choices. The negotiation between those two realities was constant and not always peaceful. There were years, particularly in the 1960s, when she was reported to be deeply unhappy, isolated in a palace in a country where she was adored publicly and understood privately by very few people. She tried in 1963 to return to acting. Hitchcock approached. She became genuinely passionate about flower arranging, eventually writing a book on pressed flowers. She made audio recordings reading poetry. She founded arts festivals. She hosted literary evenings at the palace. But the woman who had told her father at 12 years old that she wanted to act, the woman who had left Philadelphia at 18 and gone to New York alone, the woman who had persuaded Hitchcock and Gary Cooper and the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences that she was one of the finest performers of her generation, that woman was still in there, and she never fully had permission to come out again. Her children grew and had complicated lives. Her daughter Caroline's marriage to Philippe Junot in 1978 was a public disaster, a union that Grace opposed from the beginning and that ended in divorce within 2 years. Her relationship with Stephanie, her youngest, was reportedly the most difficult. Two strong personalities in close quarters, a mother and daughter who loved each other intensely and clashed intensely in equal measure. It was Stephanie, 18 years old, who was in the car on that September morning in 1982. Whether Grace had a minor stroke first and lost control of the car, or whether something else occurred, was never definitively established. The car's brake system was examined and found to show signs of failure, which opened questions that were never fully answered. What we know is that she survived the initial crash, the kind that looks effortless but costs everything. The kind that is built in private through discipline and intelligence, and the quiet decision made again and again across a lifetime to show up fully for whatever role you have been given, even when it is not the role you chose, even when the role you chose was taken away. She is buried in the Cathedral of Our Lady Immaculate in Monaco, beneath the altar, in the same vault as Prince Rainier, who died in 2005. She was, in the end, a princess, but she was also Grace Kelly, and that was always the larger thing. She once said, in one of her rare reflective interviews, something that has stayed with people ever since. "I would like to be remembered as someone who accomplished useful things and who was a kind person." She accomplished more than useful things. She was more than a kind person. She was a woman who understood, perhaps earlier than most, that the roles we are assigned and the lives we build inside them are rarely the whole story of who we are. And she played every role she was given with everything she had, every single one. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to ChronosX Secrets for more untold stories that changed the world.